I would say longevity is one of the hottest topics for a reason. It's a fascinating topic, and we're in a very novel position. You know, we're about to have more people over the age of 65 than we are more people under the age of 18 for the first time in this planet's history. So there's this whole push on longevity. And the one molecule I've heard, you know, dive into the world of David Sinclair and then Peter Attia.
I was just with him, actually. Yeah. So
amazing. Yeah. So is he?
Yeah. Sharp guy, really sharp guy.
Yeah, he's Australian, mate. Captain America, and he's Captain Australia. But he hasn't mentioned, or has he? Hasn't, to my knowledge, I read his book and listened to a lot of his podcasts. He hasn't mentioned C60. Is this a new discovery in the world of longevity? It sounds like it totally makes so much sense in the world of longevity. Like, how do you use it for longevity? What did David Sinclair say even?
Actually, it's kind of funny because he was on a podcast and they were interviewing him, and he was talking about it. We had talked about this before, and I told him this before, but I did this experiment with p53 knockout mice, who are they're the mice that we use in oncology when we're trying to test different chemotherapeutics to see how well it's going to work against blocking or ameliorating or negating tumor burden. And so my mice not only did they not die of cancer and get tumors, which they're literally genetically designed to do, they lived 93% longer. So to the best of my knowledge, that is the longest extension of a mammalian lifespan that anybody's actually ever pegged down, is 93%. Now, there's another group in France that did the same thing with C60 that I was doing, slightly different, but they got a 90% difference in lifespan, right? They got a 90% extension. Yeah, it was
original research on the rats. I remember reading something about
rats.
They tried to find the toxic load, and in the end, they're like, they're not dying, they're living longer. Was that right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, that was the Paris study in 2012. Yeah, and that was Fahy Moose's research group, and it was the paper is under BAATI, BAATI et al. So it's a good paper. It's kind of interesting though. It's just humorous when you look at the mortality curves, the way they plotted. It's like dead control group, dead experimental group, C60 group just keeps going. You know, it's kind of it's a lot like the experiments with gamma radiation that they did on rats with C60. They were giving them like 8 to 11 sieverts, which probably means nothing to most people, but it's like a super lethal dose of radiation. And the rats that had the C60, they just kept on humming. You know, it handled the ionizing radiation incredibly well, and they motored on.
Just as a point of reference on that, Ian, how much gamma radiation did the Hulk receive when he?
A little bit more than that. I mean, that's what changes the green color. You got to get a lot.
Just wanted to clear that up. Sorry, back to your mice and your mice.
That's a transient effect too, but it really does do a lot for your muscles. So,
your mice, were they using the Neural RX or the Olympic RX, or were they just using C60 on its own?
So it was kind of like a version that was closer to the Olympic RX because it has a more whole body effect. The neural you're not able to, with caprylic acid, you're not able to bind as much C60 in it. So I wanted something where I could get a lot of C60 into the cells because I was trying to kind of hit peak perfusion, like get as much of it in their system as I could. So it was closer. It was the same oleic acid base, and it had just a couple of other compounds in it. So sadly, I hadn't developed the Olympic at that point. It would actually function even more effectively. So I think if knowing that, I mean, granted, that was quite a while ago. It was almost a decade ago that I did that now. And if I did it now, I think a 93% extension would be laughable. I would expect a couple 100% at best. And
mate, let's give the people what they want right now. Those out there listening to this going, tell me what to do for a longevity protocol. What? Hang on. It's not black and white. I'm try to stay away from try to stay away from binary statements, don't I? On the longevity piece, what would you suggest using what your understanding and the toolbox that you have in your garage? What do you suggest for longevity? Just on that.
Okay, so the best thing that I've seen personally is, and this is why I started taking it in high doses, is the C60. But I would also say that you'd want to do a pretty chunky dose of urolithin A and a pretty hefty dose of L-carnosine as well. So in one triggers urolithin A triggers mitophagy, right? So it finds damaged mitochondria and it stimulates macrophages to go in and break them apart so that your body produces new healthy mitochondria to replace them. And then L-carnosine is a senolytic, so it goes in and it scours through the cells. And truly, there are a couple of people that have made just crazy strides on longevity. There's a fellow I know who's a really great cryobiologist named Greg Fahy. And Greg has a thing called the TRIM-X protocol that's in FDA phase 2s right now. And it's basically using somatropin, which is like a human growth hormone. So it's using low dose human growth hormone at 0.015 mg per kg as a daily dose 4 days a week in combination with DHEA, metformin, which I don't actually agree with. I think you'd be better off with berberine rather than something that's impinging the mitochondria for the same effect. But Greg's gotten phenomenal results, and then I think zinc and vitamin D are the other two components. But as a kind of a daily cocktail 4 days a week, he's actually been working on thymic regeneration. And when the thymus gland regenerates, it's what actually takes a lot of your cells and matures them so that your immune cells function, right? And it puts your immune system back online. And if you look at Greg talk, and I know him personally, he's a really sharp guy, but he's in his, I think Greg's 73 now. When you watch a lecture with Greg talking, you look at him and go, there's no way in hell this guy's 73. And like we've been at conferences together and talked, and genuinely a nice, kind man and very smart, really good cryobiologist. Who figured out how to freeze organs and thaw them without destroying them so that they could be reused. Really, really, truly brilliant work on that front. But his TRIM-X protocol is great. I mean, it's showing all of the indices that you can check for, the Horvath clock and methylation clocks and the Grimm-Age clock. Everything that he's tested, it appears that it's rolling the clock back. And it's so, and if the proof's in the pudding, if you look at Greg, homeboy looks pretty damn skippy.